I wondered what time it was. The watch was still on my wrist, but it was too dark to see. The moon had set, and the mist was falling thicker, making the cold seep into my bones. Only then did I realize that the clothes on my body were torn to shreds, leaving only hanging strips of cloth. The cold mist drifted into the gun emplacement, softening the smell of burning. I sat trembling, hugging the leopard to share a little warmth, and every now and then I looked out to see if the sky had brightened. While I felt as though time had stopped, the earth continued to turn. Before we step back into the smoke and fire of the battlefield to relive these unforgettable memories, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps ensure that the sacrifices and the youth of these soldiers are never forgotten. Now let's return to the front lines. The southeastern sky was shifting from grey-black to white and then gradually to blue. The first rays of the day painted a brilliant pink on the thin clouds, as if to announce that today would be beautiful. Though I was very impatient, I still had to wait until the sunlight turned the treetops golden before leaving the gun emplacement. I retraced the path I had run the night before. A few minutes later I found the submachine gun stuck in a bush. The magazine was still more than half full, which was very good. There was still the AR-15 rifle hidden in the hollow of the banyan tree, but right now I needed a weapon in hand. I sensed that the enemy would not give up so simply. They might have left a team behind to ambush us. I could not count how many of them had stepped onto the flying coffin last night. On the trail soaked with morning dew, ants were still busily gathering in black and red clusters around pools of dark purple blood covering blood-stained leaves. Golden bullet casings were scattered everywhere. Circling a clump of trees, I was overjoyed to see my backpack right beside the trail. The stone leopard was also lying there. These guys were truly terrible, intending to steal even a work of art. However, I hurriedly picked up the backpack and left the trail, slipping into the bushes to head toward the house. Around me, birds were still singing and the leopard walked calmly by my side, but I still felt a heavy sense of unease in my head. Reaching the edge of the grass clearing, I gently slid my body down flat against the ground and parted the leaves to look out. What I saw before my eyes made me feel relieved. The monkeys were bewilderedly running back and forth at the foot of the stairs. So there was no enemy ambush and the monkey house was still safe. Returning to where the backpack was, I sat down about 2 meters away from it, frowning in thought. If there were no enemies, why did I still have such a heavy premonition? These soldiers were not amateurs. They were skilled and crafty. Would they really give up so easily? The mist gradually dissolved and faint rays of sunlight pierced through the treetops, making the trail clearer. I observed carefully and cried out in delight. Here it was. A small wire ran from the backpack down into the layer of fallen leaves near the tree root. It was not a forest vine. This wire was taut and smooth. A grenade trap. A petty trick. This gang could only trap the hasty, and I was not among them. A moment later, I grabbed the grenade lying under the dry leaves, bent the pin so it would not slip, and gently cut the wire. Around the backpack there was nothing else, but I stood still, filled with anxiety. Death was hovering somewhere in this small space between these clumps of trees. The danger seemed palpable. I looked carefully around, even up at the treetops, but saw nothing. But there was indeed something unusual. It was the backpack itself. It was placed upright beside the trail. No one in a hurry would throw a heavy backpack down so neatly. Stepping gently closer, I placed my left hand on the backpack to keep it from tipping over and leaned in, sliding my right hand to grope in the layer of leaves underneath. A minute later, my fingertips touched a shell that was smooth and cold enough to make me shudder. A grenade. I fumbled to grip the safety lever tightly and slowly pulled it out. The grenade had its pin removed. This was the main content of the trap. The one outside was just a decoy. Suddenly I felt satisfied with the soldiers. At least they had to be like this to be worthy of being called elite. They would not let me win easily. Perhaps this trick belonged to the sergeant. He had a personal grudge against me, and right now down in the underworld he was probably impatiently straining his eyes looking for me and grumpily asking why it was taking so long. After checking under the backpack one more time and opening the flap to thrust my hand inside to check and feeling sure, I finally slung it over my shoulder. As for the stone leopard, I would leave it here for now. I pushed it close to the tree root and covered it with leaves. Seeing me appear, the monkeys rushed forward, chattering in joy. The old monkey stood on his 2 hind legs, looking up at me as if asking what had happened. The others ran around scratching their heads, pulling their fur and jumping about. One rolled on the grass, another climbed swiftly up a tree and then slid down just as fast, their mouths making chattering sounds like popping corn. They were expressing their joy in true monkey style. I looked at the scene of the house and felt discouraged. It truly looked as if a band of bandits had just passed through. Pots and pans were scattered at the foot of the stairs. The pile of firewood under the floor had also been dug up by them to search. Upstairs it was even worse. The door had been ripped off and thrown on the ground. The walls were kicked through in many places. Inside clothes were thrown everywhere and the grass mattress was strewn all over the house. Rice and salt were spilled and scattered in the cracks of the wooden floor and fell down into the woodpile below. Several cakes of sugar, packages of crab noodles and strings of dried fish had also been pulled down by them and thrown disorderly on the floor. I gathered things up and stuffed them into the backpack, feeling a sharp regret as I looked at the spilled grains of rice and salt. Right now there was no time to pick them up. Fortunately, there were still some reserves I had hidden on the helicopter. Well, it was not worth regretting. If calculated carefully, apart from the spilled rice and salt, I had not suffered much damage. Everything they intended to take away was in the backpack and had been recovered, including the map, the compass, the lighter, and the bag of medicine. They only took the submachine gun, but I had snatched another of the same type, which was even newer. So I had not lost much. The dried meat did not count, considering it a cost. Thanks to it, I gained a little time and made the soldiers somewhat less vigilant. Moreover, at this moment it had the significance of a last meal for a condemned man before execution. There were cuts and scratches on my body, and the spot where I was hit in the ribs was still aching, but I could still walk, which meant it was not too severe. Just now I had also injected myself with a dose of antibiotics. I went down below the house, took a cake of sugar, chopped it into 6 pieces, and gave each animal a portion, giving the monkeys 2 torn packages of crab noodles. At times like this, there was no point in being stingy. After a disaster, being able to meet again fully and intact was precious enough. While the monkeys happily received their gifts and each sat in a corner eagerly gnawing on sugar agar, the leopard lay flat on the grass, holding the piece of sugar with his 2 front paws and licking it with his tongue, as if eating only out of respect for me, since his demeanor was not very enthusiastic. Leopards and monkeys clearly had 2 different culinary schools. I felt guilty because after all the leopard had done, he deserved a better reward. But right now I was in a hurry. The enemy could come up at any time. I would treat him to grilled fish later to his heart's content. But actually the leopard did not do things for food right away. I went to the stream to bathe briefly, then opened the bottle of alcohol to apply to the dense scratches on my body. It stung sharply, but it relieved the worry of infection. It was lucky my eyes were unharmed. In any situation one can always find something lucky. Is that the way humans often comfort themselves when encountering misfortune? I put on a new set of camouflage clothes and submerged the torn set in the stream, weighing it down with a rock so it would not float away, intending to wash it later to use as gun-cleaning rags. Nothing here could be thrown away. Last night, while waiting for daylight, I had calculated carefully. The enemy would return at least to collect the bodies. Up to this point, every aircraft and every person who came here, whether little or much directly or indirectly, was related to the gold I was guarding. Maybe the soldiers last night did not know why they needed to capture me alive, but their commander certainly knew. Mr. Tong was involved. Of course. The security sergeant from the 6th Air Wing and also the captain, his boss. And the words the girl said that day, that helicopters of the Air Wing were responsible for all tactical combat missions throughout the tactical zone. Honestly, I had no illusions about the enemy, but I had trusted a part of the human in him too much so now I truly felt the bitter taste. It was naive and foolish to think that everyone thought like me. However, the fitting punishment delivered upon the raid last night helped me somewhat correct my mistake and would open his eyes. But it seemed there was still something lingering and hard to understand in this matter. He was not a blabbermouth like that captain. The immediate task was to move my dwelling, but I could not do it today. My ribs were still aching dully, and heavy work might make it worse. Besides, crawling deep into the forest right now to live in anxiety, not knowing if the enemy had come up or what they were doing, would be worse than torture. It was best to stay in the gun emplacement. It was discreet and unexpected, and also a favorable observation point. If the enemy landed troops, They would not suspect that I was right next to them. I packed necessary items into the backpack, adding a dozen grenades and 14 magazines captured from the soldiers last time. All the remaining belongings I stuffed into Mr. Hung's backpack and carried it along with the AR-15 rifle to hide in the forest. Once everything was done, I shouldered the backpack, carried the gun and the water can, and went up to the gun emplacement. The monkeys stood watching bewilderedly. Poor things. There was no way to tell them to find another place to live. Staying here had now become dangerous. It was only because of their attachment to me that they had lived in the banyan tree for so long, otherwise monkeys have a very good instinct for finding shelter. Reaching the gun emplacement, I slid the water can and backpack inside and then walked backward to erase all footprints. I smoothed every bent blade of grass, pinched off broken branches, and plucked all the withered leaves on the trellis of vines caused by the muzzle flash. When I checked and saw everything was fine, I crawled inside, lowered the camouflage screen, and spread the poncho to rest. My whole body ached as if every joint were falling apart. Outside the sun was high and the sunlight began to warm everything, but inside the gun emplacement, it was still freezing cold. I had to take the wool blanket to cover myself and lay dazed for a while before falling asleep. Near noon, the helicopters came up. I was awakened by the drone of engines echoing from afar. I sprang up and looked at my watch. It was past 11 o'clock. Inside the gun emplacement, there were spots of golden sunlight filtering through the leaves. When I parted the vine trellis to look out, my eyes were dazzled by the sun, and it took a few minutes before I saw 2 helicopters circling to the east of the grassy hill area. Raising the binoculars to my eyes to observe for a while, I understood that they were flying a search pattern and circling closer and closer. I checked my guns and ammunition, laid the grenades by the edge of the gun emplacement, then opened a packet of crab noodles, breaking off pieces to chew. Thanks to sleeping for a while, I felt alert and calm. From this concealed hiding place, someone standing right outside would have difficulty detecting me. And if they used dogs to track me, I would show them what a storm of fire was, but that would also be the final battle of my life. About 10 minutes later, the 2 helicopters flew over my position. When they discovered the pile of aircraft wreckage, they circled back. Several soldier heads wearing ballistic helmets peered out the doors. They flew out of submachine gun range, but the heavy machine gun could easily reach them. So they were completely unaware that I had this gun. The girl did not speak, and those who knew would never speak again. I lowered the binoculars, fearing the glass reflection would reveal the target. The roaring engine noise drilled into my ears, making my mind tense up as if hypnotized. My hands automatically swiveled the heavy machine gun, pointing the barrel at the sky, my index finger feeling for the trigger, my eyes squinting down the sight. There were over 300 rounds, left enough to take down at least one. No, I could not shoot. I still had to return. I took several deep breaths and released the gun. The 2 helicopters opened wider circles, probably to examine the surrounding situation. A moment later, they flew toward the grassy hill, lowered gradually, and disappeared behind the ridge. The engine noise faded. They landed out there. What did that mean? Landing troops. I was very impatient, but at this moment I could not climb up to look. About 5 minutes later, there was a chopping sound echoing from afar and getting louder. Hearing the sound, I knew there was only one. Was it one of the 2 earlier, or were they now bringing troops? The helicopter flew closer. It was not a UH-1A. This type was strange. It flew slowly, heading toward the sand flat and gradually decreased altitude. When it was about 100 meters from me, a white flag with a red cross in the center suddenly appeared from the side door of the aircraft. A body retrieval helicopter. I was both surprised and amused. These guys were very polite. And sensible, too. But they were too careful. I had no desire for killing. Not only that, I was hoping they would come down and clean up that pile of bodies out there for me. Since morning, I'd been worried about it. I did not have the strength to bury them, and leaving them like that felt wrong and would stink up the whole area. I was even afraid the tiger down below would come up to taste them and get used to the smell, although I was not sure if it would crave dead bodies reeking of gasoline and explosives. I took the radio and tinkered with the frequency to find the channel of those on the helicopter, but could not. Maybe these helicopters did not have the corresponding radio system installed, or they used a frequency band I could not find. It was a pity. If I could hear what they were saying to each other, I would learn many things. The ambulance helicopter landed on the sand flat. From the helicopter door, 5 or 6 soldiers poured out carrying stretchers. They toiled to dig out pieces of charred bodies from the pile of twisted metal, put them in plastic bags with zippers and carried them onto the helicopter. From the grassy hill, the other 2 helicopters occasionally took turns flying up to circle overhead for surveillance. They dared not fly both at once for fear of running out of fuel. It took more than 2 hours for the body retrieval team to retreat onto the helicopter. There is no need to recount their work in detail because it was a gruesome scene with nothing attractive about it. When the helicopters flew away, the jungle returned to silence. It was late afternoon. The autumn sun was dyeing the forest on the other side of the stream, a golden yellow and glimmering on the water flowing through the rocks and the smooth grass clumps. The afternoon scene was still as affectionate as it had been for generations. Only the fragments and the pile of blackened metal down there were lonely to the point of being brazen amidst the wild nature. I propped up the vine trellis to let the sunlight flood into the gun emplacement, then climbed out, interlaced my hands around my knees, and sat blankly. In front of me was the ravine of reed grass, with pure white flowers trembling in the wind. Out there, the slope of the grassy hill was tinged with honey-yellow sunlight. A little further was the cypress top like a green tower swaying, and behind it, the silvery white sky stretched to infinity. That way lay the lowlands and the sea. I sat silently for quite a long time, no longer remembering what had just happened. The scene was beautiful, but so sad. Perhaps later, when I returned down there, I would miss these afternoons here. But now, in this beautiful sunlight back in my hometown, chrysanthemums were in full bloom. Marigolds, too. If someone sowed mustard greens early and did not pinch off the tops quickly, the mustard beds would bloom with yellow spots in the garden, glowing yellow like sunlight condensing into flowers. Even the pomelos on the branches were dyed yellow by the sun on their skin seeping gradually into each segment. And at twilight, sponge-gored flowers would flicker in the green foliage like spots of lingering sunlight. Aga the leopard had just returned from somewhere and silently lay down beside me. "You always arrive at the right time, Aga, otherwise I would be so sad alone." But where had he been all day? And his belly looked so flat, surely he had not eaten or drunk anything. I stroked his sleek fur and silently thanked the animal for saving my life many times. No one knew if that night the leopard happened to be there at the right time or had been lying in wait beforehand. As for why he attacked the dog, which was the key to my rescue, I guessed that the leopard had previously seen people dressed in soldiers' clothes, smelling like that walking with me, so he only jumped at the arrogant animal that dared to intrude into his marked territory. Or perhaps, due to the cunning instinct of a wild beast, he knew where the greatest danger was concentrated. Well, whatever the case, Aga the leopard had delivered a magnificent blow. The captain, before dying, must have been satisfied with the duel, just as prepared, only the result forced him to take his grudge to the grave. To be fair, the enemy was not subjective when escorting me. They just did not expect the superior skill of the leopard. Even I was surprised. The German shepherd, though taller and bigger, could not match the claws and sharp teeth of the leopard, the toughness, endurance, and extremely quick reflexes inherited from its species, the ability to attack by surprise practiced regularly through daily hunting, and the loyalty to the person who had cared for it since it was orphaned. These helped the leopard surpass and win in the unplanned contest. The enemy thought that the smart German shepherd, carefully trained, would detect the leopard. But during those sunny days in that stretch of young forest, dozens of animals had passed by, yet the dog had never smelled the leopard once. I felt satisfied that I had sculpted a statue of the leopard. He deserved it. The sun sank lower. In the evening shadows, the wings of a stray bird flashed, and a few startled bird cries dissolved into the vast air. I went back to the house, carried a bag of charcoal up to build a fire to sleep in the gun emplacement, hoping tonight would be quiet. The next morning I went back to the house, intending to pick up the rest of the spilled rice, but there was nothing left. The ants had carried it all back to their nests. Even the salt grains had soaked up the dew and melted into water. I had to go up to the helicopter to get some rice and salt, preparing to look for a new place to stay. It was time to abandon this beautiful stretch of stream. It was because of my attachment to it that I had almost lost my life twice. What the enemy would do next was unknown, but I could not hesitate forever. The sunny spell had lasted nearly 10 days. It was about to rain again. At that time I could not sleep in the gun emplacement. I followed the stream upwards, intending to find a convenient place to build a temporary shelter to pass the winter. When I reached the section where the stream flowed through the rock field, I put down my backpack and waded across to the other side to check the gold hiding place. Arriving there, I saw grass and vines had grown lushly covering the cave mouth. Perhaps there was no need to worry about anyone finding it. What I needed to worry about was remembering the landmarks carefully, otherwise it would be hard to find later. I was struggling to measure the distance from the big rock by the stream up to the cave when I suddenly heard a droning sound and the noise of the flowing water. An airplane, right? Or did I mishear? The engine noise grew clearer. Damn it, they were coming up again. I hurriedly erased my footprints and waded across the stream to where I put the backpack. Another sound reached my ears, making me even more stunned. The beeping signal sound rang out from the radio. Was it her? Others could also use this frequency, right? I nervously pulled out the antenna and turned on the listening button. Mr. Hai, answer me. This is Thu calling. It was indeed her voice, but why was it so strange? Was the enemy using her? If not, that colonel would never let her fly. The sound of my pulse beating in my ears drowned out the hurried calls coming from the machine. Anyway, I had to answer. If she asked, I would know. I spoke into the machine. I'm listening here. Mr. Hai, her voice rang out with joy. Are you okay? I'm fine. You're coming up. I intended to ask what she was coming up for, but suddenly remembered and said differently. Who you coming up with? I'm coming alone. Mr. Hai, please trust me. She spoke as if she wanted to cry. It's a critical matter. The engine noise sounded very close. It seemed the helicopter was circling outside the sand flat. I spoke quickly. You land. But just sit there and wait for me. No, currently I am far away, about 20 minutes to arrive. Can I land on the grass field in front of the house? Can I land? I asked again. Piece of cake, she exclaimed. I checked carefully the other day. Joyful, I shouldered the backpack and ran. After just a few steps, the pain in my side shot up again. I bit my lip, trying to walk fast, looking through the gap in front of me, seeing the helicopter gliding over the strip of young forest, pausing a bit and then descending behind the treetops. A few minutes later, I stopped by a tree near the waterfall, raising the binoculars to my eyes. The aircraft was parked on the grass by the stream pool. I saw only her sitting in the pilot's seat, her eyes wide open, watching outside. Restless, my heart pounding in my chest, I slipped hurriedly past the tree roots, my legs feeling as if they were tied together. Seeing me, she opened the door, jumped down, and ran toward me. When she was only a few steps away, she stopped, stared at me, and suddenly squatted down, covering her face and crying. I stood bewildered, rooted to the spot, feeling my eyes sting. A moment later, I stepped forward, awkwardly shook her trembling shoulders, and clumsily asked, Miss Thoy. What? What's wrong? They slowly stood up, her face streaming with tears, her mouth speaking as if weeping. You're still alive. No, it's a ghost, I tried to joke. Thigh lunged forward, punching my shoulder, thumping. You devil. I was worried to death and you're still joking. Seeing me grimace in pain, Thuy asked frantically. Oh. What's wrong with you? Nothing. Nothing. Don't hide it from me. You're wounded, aren't you? I had to tell the truth. They hit me in the ribs with a rifle butt. Sit down here. Let me see. She spoke like an order. I had to sit down on the grass, awkwardly pulling up my shirt flap. Heaven's looking like this and you say it's nothing, it's all purple and bruised. Does it hurt here? Her fingers traced over each rib, making my body feel hot. Here, and here too. She exhaled and said, Definitely 2 ribs affected. Luckily just bruised, not broken apart. It hurts a lot, doesn't it? Just a little. But I'm afraid of internal bleeding. No. If there was internal bleeding, you wouldn't be walking by now. Give me your hand. She reached for my hand to take my pulse. Good heavens, taking a pulse at this moment, I would probably collapse from heart pain. She was acting like a doctor. I pretended to whine. Do you know how I know a little bit? She laughed and continued. Pulse is fast. Probably because you just ran. Well, wait until we get down. I'll call a doctor. I burst out laughing. You intend to fly a doctor up here, secret? I'll tell you later. She giggled. The two of us went up to the house. She stood bewildered, looking around. Why is it like this? They ransacked it. So how did you escape? It's a long story, I'll tell you later. What about Aga and the monkeys? They are all safe. Oh. She covered her face with both hands and after a moment looked up at me, her eyes teary. And I was afraid. I thought, what did you think, Now I'm not afraid of bad luck anymore. When I flew away, I kept thinking if I came up here and you weren't here, I didn't know if I could fly back. But what did you come up here for? I knew it, you'd asked like last time. No, it's very dangerous here right now. You came up alone without weapons, aren't you afraid? I'm very afraid. But worrying is just worrying. I believed you were still alive. What if I opened fire? I wasn't afraid of that. If you wanted to kill me, you would have shot the day I flew the soldiers up here. Back then, I was your enemy. I was stunned, though I truly had a very nice way of thinking. But I didn't know what I had thought before opening fire on that helicopter. But how could you come up here? I flew, of course. Did you think I forgot the way flying in the sky isn't easy to get lost like walking in the forest? Why do you keep asking like an interview? Because for a long time there's been no one to ask. I laughed and asked, You flew secretly. Why secretly? I understand now. She looked at me, her face suddenly sad. No, it's not like that. You suspect Uncle Tong, don't you? I smiled awkwardly. I don't trust. Maybe you don't know yet. But do you remember the sergeant who placed the recording device the day we exhumed the grave? Sergeant Hung, right? And his boss, too. The guy with the high-pitched voice. Captain Kwok Truong of Section 2. That guy is very close to Uncle Cody. Both of them were in the group of soldiers that came here the night before last. I thought for a while and then said, I didn't know that yet. But I guarantee that Uncle Tung is not involved. He arranged for me to fly. Can you explain more clearly? The helicopter that day was flown by an American? The Air Force doesn't have that type. And I learned it flew from the Trang carrying a recon team from in there. As for why there were 2 people from Section 2, I don't know. But the 3 that came to pick up bodies yesterday were from Air Wing 6. That's right. Yesterday morning, Uncle Tung received a telegram from inside requesting the organization of an emergency rescue mission. When he heard the coordinates announced, he panicked and ran to tell me. Did you see the rescue helicopter drop a Red Cross flag? Yes. He ordered the pilot to do that upon arrival. You wouldn't shoot. That is, if you were still alive. Only when the rescue team returned was he sure you were okay. I listened, dumbfounded. Things were gradually becoming clearer bit by bit. But precisely because of that, it was even harder to understand. It seemed both the people and the events in this matter exceeded my understanding. Well, I just had to put it aside for now. I turned and said, Anyway, you are very reckless. They could come here at any time. I don't want you to get involved. Don't you worry about yourself, yes? But I can manage on my own. And if I die, consider it for the mission, nothing to regret. I am also for the mission. Thai said proudly. Mission, I exclaimed, thinking to myself that this girl was truly unpredictable. Sometimes mature and cunning like a devil, sometimes like a child. What did you think I thought, that I didn't think anything? However, if something happens to you because of coming up here, I will probably regret it for the rest of my life. Thai glared at me. I'm not that easy to die. And don't think I came up here to visit you. Then what did you come up here for, guess? I stood blankly again, thinking. The simplest explanation was that the enemy sent her here to see if I was alive and to spy. But I didn't believe that. What else could it be I hadn't thought of yet? I give up. If you don't want to say keep it secret, I won't beg. Oh, don't be so sensitive, Liberation Soldier. She turned her back to me, reached into her bosom, pulled out a small folded piece of paper, turned around and quickly placed it in my hand. Here. I hadn't understood what was happening yet, but the warmth from the paper transmitted through my hand like a strange heat, making my whole body flush. A bit confused, I opened the paper. Not 1 but 2 sheets. And what I saw on the first sheet made me jump as if electrocuted. My handwriting. I stared blankly at the lines written by my own hand, unable to believe my eyes. How could there be such a strange thing? But these were indeed the lines, the first 4 lines of the poem Since Then by Tahu. After a moment of shock, my brain quickly resumed activity. This sheet was the first page of my notebook. Turning to the second sheet, I was even more astonished. A short letter in the handwriting of my brother Hai Nguyen. Unmistakable. Trying to keep my hands from shaking, I scanned the content of the letter. No matter how busy you are, you must come visit your uncle and aunt. You keep postponing it. In a few days, when the harvest season starts, you won't be able to go. Come, play for a few days, nephew. Since your aunt's cousin's nephew is going to transport goods near there, I told him to stop by and pick you up as well. As for the apricot trees, just leave them down there, come back after the new year to visit the grave and take them. But remember to take care of them for me. Don't let them spoil, it would be a waste. That apricot variety is very precious. Uncle and aunt are waiting for you. I read the letter again, this time slower. Gradually everything became clear. So the letter I asked Mr. Than to send had reached Brother Hai Nguyen, and he had connected a communication line back, the last leg of which was this niece. Thanks to that, his letter had reached my hands. To establish trust, he had gone to the rear base of the Quang Tri security service, taken my notebook and torn out a page to send along. In this case, there was no password more certain than that. And according to what he wrote, I had to jump on the cargo trip of the cousin's nephew on your aunt's side, that is, get on the helicopter of the girl currently standing in front of me to go down there. As for what would happen next, I had to ask the nephew to know. I wanted to ask, but why couldn't I open my mouth? I felt dizzy, my chest tight, breathless, my body flushed as if drunk. Everything around me blurred. The canopy of trees overhead floated and spun along with the patch of blue sky. My whole being felt light, as if floating in a mystical space. There I met the familiar faces of relatives and friends, those living and even those who had died. From somewhere far away in memory, familiar scenes appeared: the small forest of childhood, the thatched roof and bamboo hedge at the edge of the village, the sound of the cuckoo and clusters of ripe red leeches, the golden rice fields and the cackling of chickens at noon, the blue sea and white sand. Flashes of bombs and fire spurting from gun muzzles. All flickered near and far like a mirage. A hand shook my shoulder and a clear, urgent voice spoke. Are you okay, mister? Hi, the images suddenly vanished, leaving only before me a pair of large eyes full of worry. Mr. Hai, are you awake yet? I wasn't fainting. Why do I need to wake up? I replied calmly. You're really okay, she sighed in relief. You scared me. You looked like you were in a trance. I thought someone stole your soul. There's only you here. If you didn't steal it, who did, and giving it back to me? If I knew that, I wouldn't have given you the letter. Then you could have kept it and flown back alone. I'm not going back alone. If I go back, my dad asks, what would I say? So what are you doing? I'll wait until you agree to go, then I'll go. Don't think that once I plan to do something, I won't stop until I do it. I laughed. I heard Dad tell about it. That's why I was both praised and scolded by him. How strange, he praised me for being like my uncle, but then asked if I knew what was the right thing to do. How is Uncle these days? I asked, feeling guilty for my thoughtlessness. My dad is fine, but he's lost sleep and appetite these past few days, worrying. Why, more than a week ago, Mr. Naya, that is old Lai's son, messaged my dad to go in there. When he returned, he told me to go in to continue discussing business. My father and I just received Uncle's letter the day before yesterday. Uncle Tung arranged for me to fly yesterday morning, but encountering the raid, he had to stop. That's why my dad was very worried. I held my breath listening to the story, which was both fascinating and strange. Yesterday afternoon, when the rescue team returned, I demanded to go up, but Uncle Tung refused, saying to wait and probe to see if they had any reaction. Only this morning did he let me fly. But it's lucky. Meteorology reported that from tomorrow it will rain again. Flying up here won't be possible. I clicked my tongue. Say what you will, you are very reckless. You say that again. Don't think I'm flying alone. You are alone, aren't you? No. All day today, Uncle Tung will be on duty at the air traffic control tower. He told me if anything happens, try to fly up and contact him. There will be people to support. Support how? I was even more surprised. I don't know either. Leaving in a hurry this morning, I didn't have time to ask. But he must have trusted pilots. Things became even more tangled. Having just passed a few stressful days and being in an emotional state, I didn't have time to think and analyze what I'd just heard. And it seemed there wasn't enough information to understand everything. Remembering the content of the letter, I asked further, "What do I have to do when I get down there?" Oh, almost forgot. "Let me tell you everything. Here we fly at 5 p.m. Getting down there at twilight is just right. The helicopter will land on a hill about 10 kilometers from Da Nang. That area is a helicopter training ground, so it won't be noticed. Uncle Tung will pick you up there and take you to my house. When it's dark, you stay one night to know the house. Tomorrow morning, my dad will take you to Old Lai's place. I don't know the part after that." "Wow, sounds thrilling, like in a spy movie. You arranged this, didn't you? No way. You make it sound like I'm a real Viet Cong." "Just fair business. At Mr. Nai's place that day, I met him and another man. They only asked me about the helicopter. Getting a helicopter right now is a bit difficult, but luckily there's Uncle Tung. Of course, we also had to bribe the ground people to keep it quiet." I was concerned. "Where did Uncle and you get the money? Don't worry." She laughed and interrupted me. "The agarwood you gave me last time, I asked someone to sell it for a lot of money, enough to rent 5 flights like this. You think saying let him worry about the money I would accept, so we stay until afternoon, yes? So you have time to prepare. I also want that. Being in the forest is very nice. I have nothing to prepare for long. Just afraid they might swarm in unexpectedly. I'm worried too, but I don't know why Uncle Tung guessed for sure that nothing would happen today. Well, let's go back. You arrange everything. If there's any movement, we fly immediately. I'll go cook. After that, I'll cut your hair. Leaving this hair when you go down there, people will crowd around to see. And I know you are shy." She looked at me mischievously. I blushed purple. "Who told you that you want to tell fortunes or something? No need for anyone to tell. We girls are very sharp." She tilted her face, giggling. Coming up from the stream, I chose dry firewood to start a fire for her to cook, then went to tidy up the house. The house, or rather the hut, had sheltered me from rain and sun for more than 2 years. Now about to leave, I shouldn't let it be too desolate. I packed the remaining things carefully and took them to hide in the forest. Leaving this way, apart from guns and ammunition, I couldn't take anything else, including the AK out of ammo and the mementos left by the 2 brothers. When I returned, I saw Thuy sitting by the stove cutting beef, occasionally waving a leafy branch to fan away the smoke. Her face was flushed from the heat of the fire, strands of hair stuck to her forehead, drops of sunlight dancing on her hair and on the back of her shirt. She said to me, "I brought beef for the leopard, but now I have to save a part for him. You are in pain, eating porridge is better. But where's Aga? I'm not sure either. Lately he's been away often." It seems what she asked quickly. "It seems he." I fumbled for words. He has a girlfriend. Really, I'm just guessing he didn't tell me." "Oh my." She laughed heartily, her round shoulders shaking. "You look like that, but you're quite mischievous." By mid-afternoon it began to drizzle, the wind carrying a slight chill. The silence of the countryside was pleasant, unlike the mountains. I drifted off to sleep, the sound of the rain sounding like the murmuring of the stream back in the forest. When I woke up, there was the sound of a motorbike and voices in the front yard. I looked at my watch and saw it was nearly 6 in the evening. It seemed Oldie was talking to someone. A moment later, someone pushed the door open and stepped into the house, raincoat rustling. Looking through the crack in the door, I was suddenly stunned. Thai! She appeared in the middle of the house, as if by magic, water from her raincoat dripping onto the earthen floor. I opened the room door slightly and stepped out. "Mr. Hay," she exclaimed, her eyes glistening, strands of wet hair sticking to her cheeks. That evening she and I sat at the wooden table in the small room, talking late into the night. Outside under the eaves, rain fell in short and long drops, and the wind blew in gusts, shaking the banana leaves with a rustling sound. I told Thuy about my hometown, about childhood memories, the story of the schoolmate from back then and the red soil hill road full of blooming purple myrtle flowers. "Is the story similar to the one in that poem, Mr. High? Which poem? The poem you gave me this morning." "Here it is. She held out the page from my notebook. No way, how could it be like in the poem? Moreover, Hong and I hadn't dared to say anything to each other back then, while the poem says they had just professed their love. Well, missed appointment. Is the rest long, Mr. High, very long? Write it all out for me, she said eagerly, taking a pen and notebook from her bag. I was confused. If I had time, I could slowly recall it, but right now, where was the mind for that? I don't remember it all. Let me write the rest for you later, okay? Remember, okay? I'm waiting. I wrote the final stanza for Thuy, you went to be the star on your hat. These lines I liked very much, so I remembered them clearly in my head. I held the notebook and read thoughtfully for a while, then said the verses are truly beautiful, but why do they feel sad so the two of them didn't meet right? Yes. The young man went to fight far away, while back home the girl joined the guerrillas and remained faithful, waiting. 7 years later, when peace was restored, the soldier returned, but the girl had sacrificed herself, only her name remained on the martyr's tombstone. He looked up at the two mountains still standing together and cried, "The mountain is still double, but I lost you." She blinked, speaking as if whispering. So pitiful, isn't it? I didn't expect poetry about war to be so romantic and touching. The poet is truly talented. Of course. One has to be talented to write good poetry. But the most touching thing is that there are still such pure and beautiful loves amidst the smoke and fire of bombs and bullets, I said excitedly, as if called up during a literature lecture. And you always saying the war is still long, don't know if I'll live or die. I was taken aback. When did I say that back then, when I asked why you didn't write to Sister Hong? And this afternoon too. You told my dad. Not knowing what else to say, I sat still, my eyes drawn to her as if hypnotized. The story from the beginning until now was just to suppress something that kept threatening to flare up inside me. But at this moment, there was a strange transformation within me, a vague but powerful shift, like a seed splitting its hard shell to sprout. "Why are you looking at me so intensely?" she asked shyly, her cheeks flushing. It seems that at times like this people are supposed to say something flowery and polished, very long and very beautiful, to call it a confession. But I gave up. I couldn't think of any sentence like that. Reason had retreated to a corner to let emotion surge. I saw a strange fire shining in her eyes, not knowing that in my eyes that fire was also shining the fire in the eyes of those yearning for love. As if our hands were drawn together, we nervously found each other. It was no longer a handshake like previous times. This was the contact of two opposite currents, sparking a fire, igniting a blazing flame of desire. A warm wave surged through my body, making me float in a soothing, rapturous sensation. My soul was spinning with the rotation of the universe, and flesh and blood vibrated according to the laws of creation. Outside, the rain had stopped falling. The wind had also ceased blowing. In the quiet, still space, only the sound of two hearts beating thud-thud very close could be heard. Before my eyes were long, curved lashes, half-closed, lips slightly parted, as if waiting breath rapid and hot, and a heady, feminine scent. Suddenly the sound of a dog barking shattered the night. The space in the small room seemed to freeze. The two of us stiffened, sitting silently. The waves inside me subsided quickly, senses straining in reflex. In the front yard, the dog had stopped barking, only whining. There was the sound of footsteps and whispering, followed by the sound of the door opening gently. The wind blew the oil lamp flame trembling. Thigh clung tightly to my hand. Mr. Hay Audley called softly. "Yes." I gently removed Thui's hand and stood up. Mr. Naya slipped through the door, entered, and said immediately, "There's trouble. The base reports the enemy is gathering troops down at the commune, preparing to sweep up to this hamlet. You must move immediately." I hurriedly packed everything into the backpack and shone the flashlight to check around the room one more time. Looking up, I saw Thai standing silently, watching me, transfixed under the flickering light. In her eyes it looked like water drops were agitating. I took Thui's hand. "Thai, tell Uncle that I've gone. Remember to leave early so he doesn't worry." "Mr. High!" she cried out, burying her head in my shoulder, sobbing convulsively. Hot tears soaked into my shoulder. "Thai, don't cry," I choked up. "There will definitely be a day I return to write the rest of that poem for Thuy." She rubbed her eyes on my shirt shoulder, lifted her head. "I won't cry anymore. You go well. No matter how long the wait, I can wait." I squeezed her hand, lightly shouldered the backpack, and walked quickly to the door. Oldley and Mr. Nyai were waiting in the yard. The old man stuffed a few paper packages into my backpack and instructed there are a few packs of herbal medicine. Take the trouble to brew and drink them up there to heal quickly. As for Thu, she's very tough, don't worry. I was moved saying goodbye to old Lay and then left with Mr. Naya. At the gate there were several local soldiers waiting. That night rain drizzled, the cold northeast wind blew howling through the desolate hills. For the first time I crossed the buffer zone without a gun in my hand, and the tears kept warming my shoulder throughout the bumpy road up to the war zone. I understood that through every stage of life we not only learn wise things, know more strange stories, but also carry heavy in our hearts the love and nostalgia for the lands where we lived and fought, the people we bonded with and loved. 2 days later we reached a base area in the west of Quang Nam. The first person I met was Brother Hai Nguyen. He came to welcome me at the forest edge. "They won't return," was all I could say before hugging him and bursting into tears like a child. At that time I was in Quang Tri. Receiving news from in here reporting a liberation soldier lost in the forest, had lived for 2 years in that forest area, I immediately thought of TK1 but couldn't guess who was alive. I telegraphed Hanwei for permission and rushed in here immediately. Arriving just as Nhaya brought my brother's letter up, then your letter followed. You can't imagine how happy I was. Nhaya told me about my brother, about Thai. Unexpectedly contacting TK1, a task that for 2 years many people had poured sweat effort and even blood into and still couldn't do. My brother and niece helped in such a completely unexpected way. Brother He Nguyen spoke steadily, but his eyes looking at me were full of emotion. Through his words I learned that after TK1 3 more TK teams had set out. TK2 departed in early 1970, meaning nearly 9 months after no news of our team. They followed the western Truong Sun route to the latitude of the search area, then turned east. For 2 months, groping in the forest, they could not overcome the dangerous mountain ranges on the Laos side and had to turn back. Upon reaching a transport unit, 1 person sacrificed due to malignant malaria. A few months later, Team TK3 went up from the east, with a young ethnic minority man guiding. This team disappeared without a trace. Later, tracing their path to a collapsed mountain, the trail was lost. It is very likely they were buried in a landslide. That year, the rainy season came early. Team TK4 set out in early 1971, following the path TK1 had taken. Besides the main purpose, TK4 also had the mission of finding traces of our team, but the vehicle carrying them was ambushed on the way into Kitram. 2 comrades sacrificed and 1 was wounded. Later, enemy reconnaissance teams were operating aggressively, preparing for Operation Lam Sun 719. Brother Hai Nguyen and the command had to urgently establish TK5, intending to send them after this year's rainy season ended. Work was proceeding urgently when news about me arrived. Together with the comrades in Quang Nam, he organized a hotline to bring me back. Only then did I know that picking me up to Da Nang by helicopter was Thui's proposal. When TK2 returned in failure, Brother Hai Nguyen continued, "That is 1 year after the day your team left. I thought you had all sacrificed. That you survived and returned is truly a miracle beyond all prediction and expectation. I am alive thanks to them," I said, unable to stop the tears. "If it wasn't me, but Mr. Dang or Mr. Hung who survived, they would have returned sooner." "I understand what you mean," Brother He Nguyen blinked. "But you also did your best. In this work, as in other revolutionary work, no feat belongs to anyone alone. The members of the TK teams were all elite soldiers selected from many units. Their sacrifice is a great loss, a too expensive price we have to pay when carrying out the search plan." For 2 days I reported to Brother Hai Nguyen everything TK1 had done from the moment of departure until now. Saying reporting is fine or saying recounting is also fine. During the day we sat at the bamboo table so he could take notes, and at night we hung hammocks heads together at the pillar in the middle of the hut, lying and talking just like those nights at Bai Ha. But now there were only 2 hammocks. Tonight I told him about Mr. Than and his 2 children. From the beginning until now he only listened without saying anything. When I finished telling what Mr. Than instructed before parting, it was late at night. Outside it was still raining. Occasionally a gust of wind shook the canopy, causing water drops to fall, pattering onto the leaf roof. The fire in the middle of the hut burned flickeringly, casting shifting patches of light and dark, making the wrinkles on his face seem to relax at times and deepen at others. After hearing the story, he lay silent for a long time. Only much later did I hear him sigh and say to me, "So that's how it is. Just our small family has had so many things happen, let alone this whole country. War causes many families to separate even in ideology and affection. He suddenly sat up in the hammock staring at me. Let me ask honestly, you love Tho, don't you? But how do you know just listening to the way you tell the story I know? I haven't said anything to Thui yet. No need to say it. It's not necessary to say it out loud to be love. As for Thui, it's clear. If not for love giving wings flying only with a helicopter engine, how could she get to you deep in the forest? I also think Thy loves me. But Thui waited for me to express my feelings, and I couldn't. Why, you're worried about her background, right? I'm not worried like that at all. If saying we love each other but still measuring and calculating other things even background, then it's not love, brother. Moreover, Thui is a good person. But I still worry the war is still fierce, don't know when. All right, I understand, Brother He Nguyen said, seeing I seemed confused. But anyway, we still have to verify further. A girl whose brother was a puppet pilot lieutenant who had a record of shooting liberation soldiers and was shot dead by liberation soldiers. She herself is also a helicopter pilot sponsored by a puppet colonel and went to study for 6 months in the US. Learning to fly helicopters or studying what else is unknown. With just those background features, can one trust immediately you are a security soldier? You know this. Don't you think about the things she did? Why not? But anyway, one still has to think, does the enemy have any plot in this matter, knowing you are up there with a special mission, taking advantage of your meeting with Thui to arrange for her to create trust with you, with the organization to calculate? For the long term, very logical, right, analyzing that way is correct. But is it too mechanical, brother? Where is that way of thinking wrong? It's not wrong. It's still very necessary, especially to give us a general view of the problem. But assessing a human being like that, I'm afraid it's not enough. Go on. I don't know how to express it, but for example, a person's words, if written on paper when read aloud, can be completely different compared to when hearing that person speak directly. At that time, we not only hear but also feel from the eyes, face, voice, thereby correctly assessing the thoughts and feelings of the speaker. So regarding Thui, if only reading those facts in the background, oh true but dry, one might think so. But I've interacted directly with her, I understand. Brother He Nguyen looked at me, eyes sparkling. I also believe like you. But for those who don't have the opportunity to interact in that case, one still has to think, according to logic, still has to verify. May be redundant, but cannot be skipped. For what purpose, sir? Anyway, I've arrived and Thui still remains in there. Of course not verifying for you to get married, not time yet. Right, as for what purpose you will know later. His humorous glance made my face hot. This morning, Brother He Nguyen went on a mission, telling me to sit at home and write a report. I knew he was still worrying about matters related to the gold because the other day he said that during this time he was ordered to focus only on that. I wrote the report only about more than 2 pages, adding a diagram, making it exactly 3 pages. Was it too brief? Looking at the pages I just wrote, I hesitated for a long time. No, that's enough. That evening, Brother He Nguyen read the report and pondered for a long time without saying anything. I was worried surely something was not right. After hesitating, I timidly asked, Brother, let me rewrite the self-criticism part. He looked up and asked, What do you intend to criticize yourself about me? The time up there I did many things revealing secrets, so the enemy suspected. That is also there. But you should remember that we must accept objective reality. What must come will come. And self-criticism is different from confession. It's not that accepting all the blame is sincere is brave. But well, now tell me again the details related to the character John Smith. After listening, Brother He Nguyen thought for a moment and then said to me, When assigning the task to TK1, I mentioned a CIA agent. Surely you remember seeing me nod, he continued. That's Smith. We have some documents about him. He is an American intelligence officer who operated for many years in the Philippines, Hong Kong, Taiwan, then went to Japan before coming to Vietnam in 1968. Currently, he is in charge of a segment of the post-war plan, which has almost nothing to do with the forest area you were in. Combining the intelligence documents we have and your information, it can be thought that Smith's actions are personal. Maybe he knows about the gold-carrying plane from some source and is secretly trying every way to search for it. But to conclude accurately requires more information and takes time. The most worrying thing is what he and the enemy in general will do up there after you are gone. We must return as soon as possible to recover the gold. The way you hid it like that is discreet. They will find it very difficult to detect. But if we go up there, dig up the gold, and fall into an enemy ambush, the consequences will be irreparable. Just them planting a spy device like the tropical trees, then less than an hour after we arrive, they could land troops. I wondered, what if I stayed up there just to send news back? No. Even trusting Thu, you cannot write details to send back. And like that at home, we cannot calculate a specific plan. With that amount of gold, just a few TK teams can carry it back. I have proposed to the higher-ups to direct intelligence to closely monitor that guy John Smith. As for you and me tomorrow, we must go to Quang Binh. Out there, we will have conditions to prepare for the next plan. We will go up there by helicopter. Helicopter, I exclaimed in surprise. Of course. It is very complicated to fly to that place and fly back, but that is the only way. What are you thinking that makes you look so dazed, missing Theorite? I shyly admitted. You are truly talented. I was thinking if we had Thu and if we had Mr. Tung still in office, we could organize a flight like the recent one, but this time fly straight to the north. Previously, Mr. Tung suggested letting Thui fly me to some buffer zone. Also a good plan, but too late. If we had grasped the evolution of Mr. Tung's thoughts earlier, we would have taken advantage of many opportunities, not just in this matter. Regarding Mr. Tung, I find it very strange. Speaking like my brother as you recounted, this is a special case, but also somewhat difficult to understand. Our resistance war against the US to save the country has been quite long enough time to awaken many people like Mr. Tung. Even if lost in the past, if one still remembers the roots still attached to the homeland sooner or later, such people will recognize what is right. Even some American soldiers fighting in Vietnam realized that, let alone Vietnamese people. So the story about Mr. Tung's wife is nothing surprising. Among the stories you told me, do you know what the strangest thing is? You mean the story of my team clashing with Trey? That is also a strange story, but it happens a lot. No need to look far. Right in Aya's family. Two brothers on two sides meeting means shooting each other to death unavoidable. So what is it? It's the story of you living alone in the forest, yet love still arrived. I blushed, but I didn't intend to. Brother Heian Nguyen burst out laughing. Who says intentional love or unintentional love ever actually? There are things that seem random but are the result of a logical process. In this matter too, if you hadn't buried Trey decently along with those who died on that helicopter, if you hadn't been generous with Thui's group of soldiers carrying up and with her too, she wouldn't have come to you. It is compassion that pulled the two of you closer, understanding each other. And whatever happens later is up to you and her. As for now, first take care of yourself. The landing plan is not right now, just think about it. When arriving in Quang Binh, write it into a specific plan. Remember to calculate every possible situation in detail, every movement of each person from the moment the aircraft lands until it flies up. Other parts have people taking care of them. Okay, now go to sleep. Tomorrow we leave early. Arriving in Quang Binh, brother Hai Nguyen continued to Hanoi while I had to go to the hospital. The spot where I was hit in the ribs, though no longer painful, swelled up purple and had to be operated on to remove the blood clot inside. A week later, I was discharged. The person picking me up was the major who had taken us into K-Tram that day. Looking at him for a long time, I recognized him, not because today he wasn't wearing rank insignia, but because on his face there was a long scar with new skin running from cheek to temple. He was wounded on the way, taking Team TK4 into K-Tram. I made the landing plan, drew diagrams, and modeled a sand table with clay. A few days later, Brother Hai Nguyen arrived informing that superiors agreed with the helicopter landing plan called the TK plan. He didn't explain, but I thought the letters TK at this time meant summary tonquet of the search. That is only one more time, and failure was not allowed. The landing force was also brought in. They were 5 Special Forces scouts. They were all young and strong, the oldest only my age. All were carefully trained for combat in mountainous terrain and had experienced combat. I was the guide to the landing site. The major was the team leader. The force was a bit small, but the aircraft payload was limited. We had to carry enough weapons to fight in unexpected situations along with necessary equipment, and the return trip would be even heavier. As for the 2 pilots and the aircraft, they hadn't arrived yet. They were still practicing flying in a mountainous area with similar terrain and flight conditions. Our whole team stayed at a housing area on the outskirts of Dong Hoa town, surrounded by rows of casuarina trees. This place was formerly a production facility of a mechanical enterprise that had been almost destroyed by bombs. Now only a few rooms full of bomb fragment marks remained. It was located far from residential areas. The local government had been informed that a team of engineering troops came to stay there to prepare for bomb and mine clearance work. One of the complex tasks was bringing the aircraft in to wait. Bringing it in was hard, but camouflaging and hiding a helicopter in this area leveled by bombs and bullets was even harder. Finally, a location was found: a large courtyard in the former provincial museum area. There were already dozens of U.S. aircraft wrecks of all kinds brought back there for later display. The helicopter was repainted to look like enemy aircraft color, located behind piles of aircraft wreckage and camouflaged with their fragments. The buffalo herding children complained that the old guards at the museum, newly transferred, were too strict. No child was allowed to approach, climb, or play like before. It was said that there was a theft in there recently, but the museum had been evacuated long ago. Only bulky war artifacts remained. What was there to lose? Unlike the children, groups of international visitors were happy to stand very far away, looking in, because they were informed that inside a newly returned aircraft wreck there was an unexploded bomb being defused. According to the plan, upon arrival, the aircraft would circle to observe before landing on the grass field where Thuy had parked the helicopter the day she picked me up. After that, 2 scouts carrying anti-aircraft machine guns would go up to occupy the guard position at the heavy machine gun emplacement. I and 3 others would quickly scour the surroundings to detect if there were enemy ambushes, as well as machinery and equipment they might have planted. The remaining 4 people would camouflage the aircraft and guard on the spot. Only when it was truly safe would we dig up the gold to transfer to the aircraft. To ensure secrecy, the landing team could not practice in the field except for some combat movement exercises performed only at night and very limitedly. Therefore, I had to represent the terrain and objects of the landing site in great detail on the sand table so that everyone could visualize every movement needed. Under the guidance of the major, the whole team followed a very strict training regime, especially physical and martial arts exercises, which I pursued strugglingly. Besides, to avoid the curiosity and attention of others, we lived and worked like a real engineering unit, including contact with civilians. The secrecy factor depended on the self-discipline of each team member. But to land first, one must fly to the destination. That was the most difficult task. The flight path was calculated as from Dong Hua. We would fly over western Truong Son, then follow a route axis of line 559 flying south. When reaching the point with the same latitude as the landing area, turn east to find the grassy hill area. It was not easy at all to fly on a strange flight path without guidance from the ground and without radio contact. Moreover, we had to fly very low to avoid detection by radar from U.S. bases in Thailand when flying over the sky on the western Truong Son side, and from Da Nang when crossing eastern Truong Son. Furthermore, enemy reconnaissance aircraft were almost constantly present at key points. Low flying in complex weather and terrain conditions was a significant danger. The success of this bold plan depended on the preparation work, the skill of the pilots, and the element of surprise. In addition, a little luck was needed. Our pilots' experience flying in such conditions was still limited. I remembered Thuy and thought if she were here, the work would surely be more favorable. To help pilots navigate at certain high points along the flight path in western Truong Son, fires would be lit or flares fired when necessary. Some radio transmitters were also arranged to emit coded signals so that when the aircraft passed by, receiving the signal, the pilot would know which area they were arriving in. However, the radio on the aircraft was only allowed to transmit in case of emergency, and when returning to the airspace of Quang Binh at a location south of Route 9, a fuel truck was stationed ready. If needed, the aircraft would land to refuel. Just glancing through a few main points was enough to imagine the massive workload that Brother Hai Nguyen and the responsible officers had to handle. Hundreds of people would participate in implementing the plan, most of whom did not know the final purpose of the work, knowing only that they had to act in such a way at such a time, and with absolute precision. That is not to mention how to inform the troop units along the flight route, not to mistakenly fire at our aircraft while ensuring secrecy at the highest level. Brother Hai Nguyen joked that we were using modern means in a guerrilla style, hence the hardship. But then all preparations were completed. The helicopter, along with mechanics and pilots, was ready. Only the final factor remained: weather. Until now, I thoroughly understood what favorable weather terrain and people meant. The northeast monsoon continuously poured in one wave after another. Many times in the Dong Hoi area, the sky was clear and calm, but the sky in western Truong Son was thick with fog and clouds and vice versa. We waited impatiently. The longer it dragged on, the more the tension increased. The most complex part was maintaining secrecy, so besides training time, the landing team had to take turns carrying equipment to go detect and defuse bombs and mines, doing it for real, not pretending. Finding bombs, planting markers, digging and detonating. The reconnaissance soldiers were all proficient in the trade, while I was just a new soldier following to learn the job. But thanks to that, I also learned a lot. The hard work during the day made me focus and miss Thuy less, but at night, lying inside her mosquito net, I felt as if Thuy was very close to me. I remembered the fossilized distance between the two of us and thought if only that day we had started a little earlier or the dog had barked a little later. One evening at twilight, I was sitting with the brothers in the team chatting in front of the house, enjoying moments of true rest after a stressful day. Today there was sunshine, so the sky was clear and lighter. The day was about to slip past the sand dunes by the sea darkening gradually. A uneasy car covered with camouflage branches approached quickly from afar, rushed through the gate, and braked in the middle of the courtyard. Who could it be? Guests rarely came here, and arriving at this hour meant it must be an important figure. The car door opened, and from the car a girl jumped down and ran toward us. I stepped forward a few steps, then stood frozen in amazement. Heavens, Thuy. I almost choked. How did Thuy get out here? Mr. Hai, she shouted clearly and rushed to hug me tight. I could not utter a single word, only thinking that I had not turned to stone because I could still feel the warm tears on my shoulder and the soft strands of hair caressing my face. The young soldiers held their breath, waiting until we separated before applauding loudly. The scene looked like something out of a movie. I did not know if my face was flushing red, but Thuy clumsy wiped her tears hurriedly. Hey, if you want to hug my soldier, you have to ask for permission. Brother Hai Nguyen got out of the car at some point, squinting his eyes, looking at the two of us and teasing in a thick southern accent. Because I was too happy, they stammered, her eyes shining on her flushed face. Why don't you lead the guest into the house but just stand there dazed, Brother Hai Nguyen urged. I seemed to wake up and hurriedly took Thuy to where the brothers and the team were waiting. This is Thuy, who I have told you about. Everyone scrambled to shake her hand, greeting her noisily. The presence of a young girl speaking a cute southern accent made the atmosphere in this bomb-scarred room brighten up. My comrades all showed affection and admiration for her. As for me, there is no need to tell, those were moments of true happiness. I understood that Thuy's appearance was related to our work, something Brother Hai Nguyen said I would know later, and thus by some means superiors had verified, and Thuy was completely trusted to participate in this special mission. That night we had a small meeting consisting of Brother Hai Nguyen, the team leader, the flight crew, and Thuy. I attended as an observer because the meeting content only discussed flight techniques. In this field I was an outsider. Thuy was informed of the flight plan. She asked for more details about the flight path, the features and technical specifications of the helicopter, and modestly discussed with our pilots. The brothers all appeared very excited and somewhat admiring when hearing her present experiences in low flying to avoid radar handling bad weather conditions and navigating over mountainous terrain. At this moment she was again the Thuy from the day she flew from the forest to Da Nang. I understood nothing but still felt extremely proud seeing my girl being loved by everyone. Not just me, even Brother Hai Nguyen showed great joy. His eyes looked at his niece with tenderness and pride. When the meeting ended, it was late at night. I was arranged to rest with 2 cooking sisters sent from the police department. So the two of us did not have a chance to talk privately, but it did not matter. Now nothing could separate us anymore. The next morning, Thuy went with the pilots to the place where the aircraft was hidden. After eating, the brothers in the team urged each other to take a nap to ensure health. In reality, it was to give us a chance to sit alone together. The two of us went to sit under the old casuarina tree, broken in half by a bomb, its branches singing in the sea breeze. Thuy recounted that after I'd been gone for about a month, someone from our side came to meet her and Mr. Than delivering Brother Hai Nguyen's letter. The letter clearly stated that he urgently needed the presence of his niece, but whether to go or not was up to Mr. Than and his daughter to decide. Though he said back then, I also wanted to follow you out to meet Uncle, but Thinking of my dad being alone, I didn't dare go. When we received Uncle's letter, Dad kept urging me to go. He said, "Don't worry about Dad being sad, your brother is already like that now. If you can do something useful for the revolution for your Uncle, Dad will be more at peace." She went to Tanqui following the path I took last time to go up to the base area and then out north. Brother Hayen Nguyen welcomed her in Vinh Lang. "Does Thuy know what she came out here for?" Uncle told me. "We will return to that forest area, right? From the beginning I guessed you were doing something up there. Why didn't you ask?" "Who would be foolish enough to ask and be suspected of being a spy that would be the death of me?" She laughed and continued. "We will meet Agar the leopard again, meet the fairy stream, and surely later I will be able to fly our helicopters. They look very gentle." "Gentle how?" "The shape is gentler, the lines are rounder." "But why didn't you say anything but kept asking?" "Asking is also speaking." "Can Thuy fly them?" "It's not easy. Theoretically they are similar, but there still must be time to get used to them and practice conversion flights. But I believe that if the uncles and brothers let me fly, I can fly. And out here there are so many bombs and bullets, Mr. High, everywhere there are bomb craters. Do they know what the people here call pilots like Thuy?" "What?" "They call them air pirates." She lowered her head, speaking softly. "Well, that is right, pouring bombs and bullets down like that. So what about me? At first you were also considered an air pirate, and now a comrade." She looked up at me and suddenly burst out laughing. "You never know how to talk to girls. Did I say something wrong?" "No, what you said is true and even nice, but perhaps any girl who talks to you a few times will worry about avoiding you." I was dumbfounded, looking at her, and suddenly realized it was true. Who meets their lover and speaks so gracelessly? It was lucky Thuy was not angry. Surely so no one could be angry and smile as brightly as Thuy right now. And those eyes, too. Her eyes looked at me deeply, like the patch of blue sky that just peeked out from the clouds high above. And as always, I couldn't think of anything nice to say on this occasion. Such a waste of reading books. I had to imply, "Well, someone is following me, though." She glared, her black eyes dragging two long tails for a moment. "Someone else, not me. I follow the revolution, don't you imagine things." In the following days, we rarely had a chance to meet. I stayed up at the flight crew's place and was busy day and night. She was assigned the task of being the navigator for the flight, so she had to dive into studying a pile of documents on terrain meteorology, stacks of maps, bundles of aerial photos, along with other technical tasks. Although not very knowledgeable, I knew that being a navigator on a strange flight path in such conditions was an extremely heavy task. I worried silently for Thuy, but could not help and dared not speak out. Unexpectedly, Thuy was the one to comfort me. "Don't worry with them there, I believe we will do it. Our pilots have few flight hours, but are truly skilled." Since Thuy arrived, the weather gradually improved. Of course not because she came, but because spring was approaching. In the sky, the layer of white clouds was thinner, rising higher and dazzlingly sunny. In some places, the sky turned into a starling egg blue, signaling that the sunny days would last long. The old casuarina tree sprouted a few bunches of green buds. Then came a day when both the east and west slopes of Truong Sun were free of fog. We started very early when the ground was still pitch black. Only when we flew high did we see the eastern horizon brightening slightly. The helicopter found the grassy hill area when the sun had risen, golden light covering the forest. Along the stream, a strip of thin white mist still lingered. A slight tremor vibrated in my heart. I strained my eyes to observe as the aircraft skimmed the treetops, circling over the familiar forest area. Branches swayed, rushing birds, panicked, flapping their wings and scattering. Everything was still quiet. No suspicious traces were detected. I looked at the major, nodding slightly. He spoke into the microphone, ordering the pilot. The helicopter circled another half-turn, flying to the landing point. It paused above the grass patch by the stream pool, lowered gradually and gently touched the ground. The pilot reduced the rotor speed. The landing team unbuckled their safety belts, quickly jumped out of the aircraft, rushed to the designated positions, holding their guns to guard. I scanned around once. The grass on the field had grown lush, covering the path down to the stream. The sandy bank by the stream pool was flat. The vegetation seemed denser. The old house now looked desolate and cold. The plastic sheet roofing had been torn down by the wind, hanging loosely by the wall, tattered. There was no sign of the monkeys or Aga the leopard, and no traces proving that anyone had come here after I left. But that was just a cursory look. I tried to stay a few more minutes, trying to focus my thoughts to sense any danger. It seemed there's none. The major, carrying an AK, bent low and ran to me. "How is it? Report." "Nothing unusual seen." "Good." He raised his hand to signal proceeding to step 2 of the landing. The pilot turned off the engine. 4 scouts rushed to the aircraft, shouldered the 12.7mm gun, and carried ammunition boxes, running to occupy the guard position at the heavy machine gun emplacement. Then 2 people stayed while 2 people would scour and check the forest around the sand flat. The flight crew carried guns and jumped down. 2 pilots drew knives to cut branches to camouflage the aircraft. Thai slung an AK over her shoulder, holding a specialized device in her hand, walking around to detect machinery if the enemy had planted any. The major waved his hand, signaling my team to start. After more than an hour, I, along with a scout, searched the entire forest area with a radius of about 400 meters around the gold hiding place. No enemy traces were detected. Through the radio, I was informed that everything was fine with the other teams as well. When returning to where the aircraft was parked, I saw the scout team below had just arrived and the aircraft had been carefully camouflaged. But why was Thuy standing there crying? What happened? She cried out when she saw me. "Mr. Hai Aga is dead." "What?" I was stunned. "Over there," she whimpered, pointing toward the house. I approached and shuddered at the pungent smell of a rotting corpse. Stepping up 2 stairs, I stopped when I saw the body of Aga. He lay dead outside the threshold, maggots crawling on the spotted yellow and black fur. Standing silent, looking at what remained of the wild beast, I understood everything. When he returned and didn't see me, the leopard had run all over the forest to the places he and I used to go to find me. Not finding me, he returned to the house, lying down at the head of the floor, waiting for me to return. He lay there day after day, refusing to eat or drink, his eyes gazing out at the head of the trail where the strip of young forest was waiting for a human figure. The weary waiting exhausted his strength, until one day the spark of life in his eyes faded, and then went out. Aga died in sadness and despair. He died of loyalty and attachment to the human he had bonded with since he was orphaned. Before leaving this world, surely he blamed me for being ungrateful. "Please understand me, Aga." I tried to suppress my emotions, stepped to the tree in front of the house, turned over the rock by the base, took a shovel, and dug up the gold bar hidden there, handing it to the major. The leopard's body was wrapped in plastic cloth and buried in the gold hiding hole. Having heard about Aga, scouts said that after finishing the work, they would help me clean the leopard's skeleton to take back. Initially, I had that intention, but then stopped. When the leopard was alive, I didn't have the heart to force him to leave the forest, so when he died, let him stay with the forest. Traces on the grass and the banyan tree proved that the monkeys no longer lived here. Perhaps when I left and the leopard died, they dragged each other to find another place to live. This place now only held painful memories with nothing attractive to them. We urgently proceeded to step 3 of the landing plan. Thai and a pilot stayed to protect the aircraft while I led the others, carrying weapons and necessary tools up to the gold hiding place. It took more than an hour for us to dig out all the soil and rocks filling the cave mouth. The gold bars were put into backpacks, carried back to the aircraft, placed in iron boxes and locked. By past noon, everything was completed. We camouflaged the cave again, erased all traces, and retreated to rest under the shade of trees by the stream. Up to this point, everything had gone according to plan, but everyone was tense. It seemed that sitting next to the gold boxes, the tension increased manifold. After arranging additional guard posts, the major urged everyone to eat lunch. Initially eating dry provisions, they praised that she didn't expect it to be so delicious, and even teased me. "No wonder you refused the candy." I smiled, accepting it. Whatever happens, happens. After lunch, the command was temporarily handed over to the chief pilot. I, along with the major and Thuy, slipped through the forest towards the cypress tree to do the final task of the plan. On behalf of the whole team, to visit the graves of the 2 brothers. We lit incense on the graves and bowed our heads in silence. The afternoon tilted the shadow of the stone grave, stretching long on the grass. Only nearly 3 years, but rain and wind had filled the bomb craters. The ground was only slightly bumpy in places. But if anyone was observant, they would notice that here the color of the grass was greener young smooth grass blades, exuding a sweet scent under the afternoon sun. Several rocks by the grave were also covered in green moss, where there were scratch marks of the leopard. He had come here too to find me. I and the Major dug soil from under the grave, putting it into 2 plastic bags. We would take these grains of soil soaked in blood back to bury in their hometowns. That was all we could do. But now surely they were at peace and serene, staying with the forest. We couldn't linger long. The 3 of us sadly left the stone grave, returning to where the whole team was waiting. Reaching the edge of the forest, I turned my head to look one last time. The incense bowl on the grave was still burning white smoke curling in the wind, then dissolving into the vast space. Golden sunshine spread across the grassy hill area. The cypress tops swayed in the middle of the sky, singing a farewell song. Near the time to return, the Major ordered the entire team to check their equipment. We had to leave behind all things not truly necessary, including the food carried for contingencies and the 12.7mm gun along with the ammunition boxes. The aircraft was already carrying too much weight. I gave the Major and the 2 pilots each a captured dagger. I was a bit annoyed seeing Thuy suddenly cover her mouth laughing. What was she laughing at? Didn't she remember these knives were what I took from the group of soldiers she carried up? Much later, when asked again, Thuy laughed and said, because I saw you at that time solemnly, like saluting with a sword in the middle of the forest. We flew up at 5 in the afternoon. That was the time enemy aircraft were less active, and there was still enough light for the pilots to recognize the terrain for orientation. The heavy helicopter flew in the maze of canyons, often skimming close to the treetops. Mountain shadows rushed past outside the round window. The twilight glow filtered into the aircraft cabin, dimly illuminating the tense faces of the soldiers and the landing team. We were ground warriors who could only rampage when our feet touched the earth, but at this moment we had to entrust everything to the extraordinary efforts of the sky soldiers. And along with them was the silent contribution of the people who lit fires, fired flares, or transmitted radio signals to help the pilots navigate. They waited for months on end in rain and wind on desolate high mountain peaks to do a job that only took place in a few minutes. When the aircraft flew into the airspace of Quang Binh, darkness had covered everything. In the sky, twinkling stars appeared. The pilot took the aircraft higher, then transmitted radio signals to communicate and received guidance from the ground. Inside the aircraft cabin, it was dim and we couldn't see each other's faces clearly, but I knew joy was radiant on everyone's face. It could be said that the mission ended when we stepped down from the helicopter and were immediately embraced tightly in the arms of Brother Hai Nguyen and the people who came to welcome us. But in this story, it would be an omission not to recount events related to a character whose name we have only heard from the beginning, but whose face we have never seen. And his story is related to another story that happened a long time ago. That was a day in early May 1945 on a warship anchored off the coast of Da Nang. Admiral Yamashita, commander of the Japanese Pacific Fleet, was impatiently pacing back and forth in the command room. He was waiting for news of a flight escorting a bomber carrying gold scavenged by the Japanese army, flying from X to Da Nang. There the gold would be transferred to seaplanes to be moved to warships. World War II was coming to an end. This gold could not save the critical situation of the fascist army in Asia, but at least it had to be hidden for long-term plans. At 9 in the morning, Admiral Yamashita was informed that the aircraft had returned to Da Nang airfield, but only one, the escort plane. The pilot reported that when about to cross the Laos-Vietnam border, he flew ahead to watch for Allied aircraft. A few minutes later, his navigator reported that he no longer saw the bomber flying behind. Knowing it had encountered trouble, he circled back, hoping it had made an emergency landing on the grassy hill area he had just flown over. But the pilot found nothing. The gold-carrying plane vanished as if it had never existed. Fuel running low, he had to return. 2 planes were ordered to take off flying in the opposite direction to the coordinates mentioned, finding the grassy hill area. They circled many times searching but detected no trace of the bomber. The green forest had swallowed everything. Those were Admiral Yamashita's final efforts. The situation afterward did not allow him to find the gold again. The things told above are the main content of a handwritten manuscript in Japanese that we seized in the pile of papers in John Smith's office when liberating Saigon. According to the translators, it is difficult to conclude whether it is a report or a confession, only knowing that the writer claimed to be the pilot who flew the escort plane. It is also very difficult to determine why it fell into Smith's hands, but he probably obtained it during his time operating in Japan. Besides, we also found a plan to land Green Beret forces at the coordinates where the gold-carrying plane fell, but for a reason unrelated to it. The plan was signed by John Smith himself, and the notation on it indicated that this document was typed in only one copy, meaning it had not been sent. Smith drew up this plan in July 1969, meaning a few months after the incident where TK-1 clashed with two helicopters on the grassy hill area. I find it unnecessary to recount further details about the content of the plan, but what did John Smith do when he had information about the gold-carrying plane? At that time, John Smith and Harry Cody were close friends during their years at the Naval Academy. When graduating, Cody transferred to the Air Force while Smith transferred to intelligence, but their friendship did not diminish because of that. In 1968, when coming from Japan to Vietnam, Smith already had in hand a very interesting document that he did not know how to handle. Gold. According to him, wherever and whenever gold is still the measure of true value of humans. Therefore, when obtaining those precious pieces of information, his icy brain suddenly became much warmer, and he felt fluttered like a young man suddenly finding his soulmate. Reporting to superiors would be stupid. What to do with such rudimentary information, making a big deal out of it? There were too many vague legends about treasure warehouses in this damn tropical land. It was not certain if the confession of an old fascist pushed into a corner having to sell that information in exchange for a visa to enter the U.S. could be trusted. And if it was a true story, it would be even more stupid to let such a pile of wealth fall into the hands of others and then at most get a medal. It was best for Smith to do what he thought was best. His plan involved the best friend of the old days now working as an advisor for a unit of the Saigon Air Force, stationed right in Da Nang. With Harry, he trusted as he trusted himself. After calculating, he went to Da Nang to find Cody, and in turn, Cody actively took advantage of every opportunity to perform many search flights in the forest area where the gold-carrying plane fell. But then it was Cody himself who spoiled the matter by letting the weapons specialist of the 7th Fleet directly participate in the rocket test and get shot dead right on the search coordinates, a place not in the flight plan. Smith had to struggle to clear his friend's name, paying the price before eating. Refusing to give up, John Smith tried another trick. Robert, the colonel commanding the Green Beret forces in Vietnam, was also an acquaintance of his. Of course, the sharing ratio had to be different, and a reason was needed to mobilize this force legitimately. He had thought of a reason, drew up a plan, but before he could send it, Robert was dismissed and brought before a court-martial for mistakenly killing an intelligence agent of the Saigon government. Truly, misfortune does not come alone. Thinking he had to give up regretfully, he received intelligence about a Viet Cong soldier living for 2 years in the forest. 2 years in that forest area, could there be such a coincidence? Just needing a military security sergeant to verify a few more details and analyzing information obtained previously, it was not difficult for his intelligence officer brain to know this was the magic spell Open Sesame. No need to waste effort searching, just capture that VC alive to exploit, then go up to carry the gold back. With his position, John Smith easily connected to hire a paratrooper team as a strike force. Of course, he had to hire a flight crew and a helicopter with night-flying equipment capable of executing the plan. It cost quite a bit, but only by investing capital can one hope for profit. Anyway, it was less costly than having to share. He committed the most taboo thing in the profession when assigning his intelligence agent to command the landing team. We had to risk it, the work required entrusting to a trusted person, and this guy had collaborated with Harry before. He also had a soldier under his command who could guide the way. All of John Smith's arrangements and calculations were accurate until the near final minute. But from the moment the wild beast of the mountains jumped at the scout dog, everything was turned upside down so that his ambition was shattered along with the commando helicopter exploding in the sky. After liberation, the major was assigned the task of summarizing the TK plan. He provided me with the necessary documents to rewrite the story told above, but only the main details. The rest I had to add with my own speculations, because who knows what a person like Smith thought in his head nearly 30 years ago. And so there are still many points unclear or not entirely accurate. But what can be done? To know clearly, one must ask the two main characters in the story, Smith and Cody, if they are still alive. And even if they are still alive, ask if they would say, or if they say, if they would tell the truth. People like that rarely tell the truth about those things. The story about John Smith has interrupted the final part of the story being told, so with your permission, I will return to those days in Dong Hoi. After completing the mission, we had a small party to say goodbye to the 2 pilot comrades, the mechanics, and the Special Forces scouts. They were soldiers I admired with all my heart. They were all very gentle, living sincerely and simply, but very skilled in their work. Nearly 2 months bonded together in such a special task. We were as close as brothers in a family. Yet when saying goodbye, the 2 pilot comrades insisted on not shaking Thuy's hand. They said, "We will meet again on the next flights, little colleague, so there is no need to hurry to say goodbye." They were right. Initially, Brother Hai Nguyen intended to bring Thuy back to work at the provincial office, but the Air Force asked for her to go out there, and I understood why that made the little girl so happy. For now, Thuy was waiting for Brother Hai Nguyen to finish his work here to go with him to Hanoi to visit her uncle's family. Then she would contact the new job. As for me and the Major, we were waiting for the brothers from the unit of Mr. Dang and Mr. Hung to take the soil soaked with the blood of the 2 brothers back to their hometowns, a sacred duty, but no matter how well done, could not bring joy. It was near Tet. On the fields bordering the town, the green of newly transplanted young rice edged tightly around bomb craters. We had leisurely moments to talk to each other, but Thuy was very sad. When first coming out, she was busy with work, so she forgot the sadness. Now free, she missed her dad. I love Dad so much so instead I get to celebrate in Hanoi while Dad is all alone. To cheer Thuy up, I invited her to the beach. To the beach. She looked at me with round eyes. The sea is rough. I laughed. We just sit on the shore, not go down to the sea, so what are you afraid of? Rough seas also have their own beauty. She giggled. Hearing you speak is truly nice. No way, I am very clumsy. There are things I think about forever in my head, but cannot say out loud. What things, brother? She asked back. I was confused for a while and knew I had just missed an opportunity, but it seemed they didn't notice. The 2 of us went to the beach about 3 kilometers from where we stayed. Thai and I walked along the riverbank. It was not raining, but there had just been a northeast monsoon, so the weather turned cold. Was that why Thuy's cheeks were flushed pink? The wind from the sea blew strongly. The Natla River, usually gentle now, also had waves. Thoy walked close to me, her long hair flying in the wind, and her voice also flew along, blending into the sound of water lapping the shore. So I followed you to the south, to the north, up the forest, down the sea, right? I teased back. Up the forest is okay, but into the south, only to Tam Kai, out north, only to Dong Hoi, and later only sitting on the shore, not wading into the sea. Well, that's following the revolution. That's the only way you stop asking what I came out here for. The 2 of us sat on a small sand dune with low-growing casuarina bushes, some clumps of spinifex grass and beach morning glory vines, trying to cling their roots into the sand to avoid being washed away. In front was the scene of a rough and majestic sea. The vast water surface was now surging and boiling from far offshore. White-capped waves followed one another, rushing to the shore. When getting close, the swell waves rose high, then crashed down, booming like a waterfall, rushing onto the sandy beach, one wave after another, throwing white foam water dust, flying to where we sat. That afternoon we spoke words of love in the roaring sound of the sea. Perhaps that is a good experience for young men who are clumsy and shy like me. Just confess by the sea when the sea is rough. We only need to speak very few words and do not need to be very flowery, while the eyes will say what is in our heads. Perhaps it is the same for girls. No need to worry about being bewitched by sweet words, because the sea at this time does not allow anyone to say many words. Only those who truly understand and love each other can speak to each other with their eyes. Love started from the forest, the vows spoken before the sea. We had to overcome a long distance, not just in space, to reach the first clumsy and passionate kiss of life. She and I stayed in Dong Hoi for 3 more days. For the 2 of us, those were very beautiful and warm days, even though outside it was drizzling and the temperature sometimes dropped below 10 degrees Celsius. After parting with Thuy, I, along with the major and 2 officers from the division where Mr. Dang and Mr. Hung worked, went to their hometowns. We found Mr. Dang's house, but his father had passed away. The grave of the old wounded soldier from the French resistance was placed in the commune's martyrs' cemetery. That day, the students took a break from school to join the villagers in bringing the soil soaked with his blood to bury next to his father's grave. I shuddered when reading the tombstone, seeing the date of his death coincided with the day Mr. Dang sacrificed. 2 fathers and sons, 2 soldiers of 2 successive resistance wars, sacrificed their blood and bones for the independence and freedom of the nation. They fell at the same time, and now in that family there is no one left. The cemetery is located next to a small station. A train was pulling its whistle, slowly entering the station, the locomotive smoke heavy under the dust rain. From that distant old forest did your spirit return here, that the train whistle sounds so heartbreaking at this moment. In Mr. Hung's hometown, the Martyrs' Cemetery lies in the middle of vast rice fields, rows of casuarinas tilting their shadows over the graves, singing lullabies day and night. His memorial service was organized very thoughtfully by the locality, but we still regretted that his wife and children were far away and could not return in time. That regret has tormented me until today. At that time, I promised myself that I would go up to visit her and the child, to tell the people closest to him how he lived and sacrificed in the last days of his life. Then busy work and worries in daily life were the reasons why I kept delaying time after time, year after year. I justified myself because the road was too far and separated. Is it true that as years pass, feelings also fade? Forgetting is not possible, but the sentimental things that should be done gradually become a kind of obligation that we have to perform reluctantly, and sometimes feel it is an annoying obsession. In 1996, I followed a delegation of officials to visit the Hoa Bin hydroelectric project. When asking about the Thay ethnic village, Mr. Hung told about before, I learned that it now lies under the bed of the Da River Reservoir. I cut short the visit to find the new village where she lived, but she had passed away. Sitting before the grave with fresh soil color, I silently told her the things she should have heard while she was alive. That's how it is. There are things when we feel regret, it is already too late. Is that what a debt of gratitude is like? Previously, every time I heard others say so, I still thought, if it is gratitude, why call it a debt? Who can borrow from whom to owe? I went to the agency where Mr. Hung's son worked to find him, but did not meet him. He is now a forestry engineer, currently absorbed in some forest, researching the topic of protecting and developing the headwater forest of the Da River. Being a person who loves the forest to the point of passion, surely now Mr. Hung is extremely happy and satisfied when his son follows the call of the forest. That day, from Mr. Hung's hometown, we went to Hanoi to work with Mr. Son's agency, and together with the agency representative went to his house. I handed back to her his mementos, the diary, letters, photos, things he left before the trip. She coaxed the daughter to go out to the yard to play jump rope with friends, so she could sit and listen to me tell about his final moments. The child was only 6 years old, should not leave in the immature child's mind horrific images of her father's death. Later, whenever remembering that day before my eyes, still flickered 2 white mourning headbands flying like butterfly wings on the baby's head, bouncing with every innocent jump. 25 years later, that little girl became a doctor working in an institute of the geology sector. Mrs. Sun is retired, still living in the small house at the foot of Goi Mountain. Once when I visited, she said, the girl keeps urging me to go to Hanoi to live with them, but I don't want to go. I always think he is about to return here. Her head has turned grey. Time and suffering have deepened into wrinkles on her face. In her eyes there is still a vast waiting, like in the photo Mr. Sun showed me at Baiha that day. After that trip, I went to Quang Tri, returning to the old unit. Brothers, friends met each other, rejoicing and grieving. Nearly 3 years, everyone thought I was dead. But beside the joy was sadness. Bang and Dung sacrificed in a mission trip, ambushed by the enemy, also on the Sim Hill area of Kam Lo. So Bang never returned to his coastal fishing village, and Dung sacrificed without once seeing the sea. I grieved, regretting 2 friends in the same work team. Thought that day parting ways, separating for a few days, then meeting again, who expected. June 1972, throughout Dongha town, just liberated, only 1 old poinciana tree remained blooming red flowers. Summer in Quang Tri, sun pouring fire, Lao wind blowing dust on streets, pockmarked with bomb craters and choked with war rubbish, the kind of rubbish often seen after fierce battles for land. My unit had a meeting, a few minutes of break. Young soldiers dragged each other to sit under the poinciana tree, chatting about everything. We were happy with the newly liberated land of Quang Tri. I also had my own joy because I just received a letter from Thuy. The handwriting seen for the first time, but seemed familiar since when. I just got to practice flying with the Mi-8 helicopter coming out here. I am pampered even more than at home. The uncles and brothers are all gentle and good coming up. I will go on a mission in there. Surely we'll meet you again." Lines of blue ink on white paper that seemed to have the sound of her voice chirping with joy. "We will meet again, of course." Near the end of the break, the cipher comrade holding a code book rushed out, calling, "Hi. Oh, where are you? Here's a telegram." A heavy premonition overwhelmed my mind. Encrypted telegrams are only used in normal work. Soldier rank like me never receives them directly. Hands trembling, holding the codebook, the cipher comrade just held out. I read the telegram on the open page, only one line. "Thai sacrificed in Quang Binh on the way to a mission here in Nguyen." No, not right. Surely there is some mistake. I just received Thu's letter 2 days ago. I read the telegram again, then again. The space before my eyes went dark around me. People were bustling. Someone said, "Let him be alone." I stood frozen, then slumped down, sitting at the base of the tree. The wind shook the poinciana petals, falling tattered red like drops of blood. Not counting the B-52 bombing of Hanoi and Haiphong, the second war of destruction against the North by the U.S. aggressors was not as massive as the first, but more vicious. At that time, Thai followed an Air Force officer delegation on a mission to the south to survey locations where field airports could be opened for light transport aircraft and helicopters. The war was coming to a decisive stage. We planned to open the Ho Chi Minh Trail in the air, so that when necessary we could quickly support the battlefields. When the delegation reached western Quang Binh, they were intercepted by enemy aircraft. A missile exploding nearby knocked the UAZ into the abyss. Thai and 4 people traveling in the car all sacrificed. After liberation in 1975, I and Brother Hai Nguyen went to Quang Binh to bring Thoi back home. Her body and those who sacrificed together were buried on a hill nestled in the midst of undulating mountains, limestone mountains, standing immersed in the fields or by the river, beautiful like Halong Bay. 5 graves lying side by side in the line formation of soldiers. On the wooden tombstones made from ammunition crates, lines of words written in red paint, darkened over time, looking like dried blood drops. Memories rushed back, aching, like seeing in the misty smoke a strange girl standing, clipping her hair by the helicopter parked in the middle of the dazzling sunny sandflat. Then the soft figure leaning by the stream, thick smooth hair falling to cover a mischievous smile round black eyes when hearing a fairy tale. The confident face and decisive eyes when sitting in the pilot's seat. The warm tears on my shoulder and the sweet kiss in the rough sea. Echoing from afar Thui's giggling sound and Thui's cheerful voice, "I follow you to the south, to the north, up the forest, down the sea." Now all has become void, only brownish black soil particles remain. The girl who loved flying all her life and once dreamed of bathing in a stream, once now she has flown far, very far. The local comrades wanted to put Thui's remains in the martyrs' cemetery, but Mr. and asked to bring her back to lie next to her mother and brother in the small hamlet by the Thu Bon River that day. Returning from the forest, she flew a little further for me to see. When about to lower the coffin, Mr. Than handed me a small box, the type girls use to keep needles and thread, then choked up, saying, "The day she went out there, she gave this item asking me to keep it. Now I hand it back to you." I opened the lid. In the box was the notebook page I gave Thui before, and a lock of long sun-bleached golden hair. I was stunned to recognize my ponytail from back in the forest. The day Thui cut my hair, she had secretly taken it back. But why did I give her the poem Nui Doi? Why did Brother Hai Nguyen tear exactly that poem page to make a password and not another page? Was it a premonition of the painful separation later? I didn't expect poetry about war to be so romantic and touching. Who expected saying that day and then becoming a person in the poem? I slightly opened the lid of the ceramic urn, placed the poem page and the lock of hair inside, so that a part of my soul and body could follow her. Losing 2 children, Mr. Than poured his love on the 2 grandchildren, Brother Hai Nguyen's children, and put all his mind into researching history. But pain and loss exhausted him. He passed away in 78, leaving behind unfinished pages. Since Mr. Than died, I haven't had any news about Mr. Tung anymore. Before that, I knew the couple lived with his younger brother's family in Quebec, Canada. Although the younger brother's family loved him very much, although the grandchildren treasured him, that did not make his nostalgia for his homeland subside. Those bright white but cold streets in that strange country were far different from the sunny, windy countryside and river scenery of the Mekong Delta region. In every letter written to Mr. Fan, Mr. Tung also sent regards to me. He said he never forgot the forest, the stream where he met me before. Later I wrote him a few letters, but for some reason there was no reply. Whatever happened, I still believe that man was not cruel enough to transfer fire to his homeland, the fire that once burned down the old house, along with the Araka Row of his childhood. A day in March 1998, having business in Da Nang, I stopped by to visit Brother Hai Nguyen. He and his wife have both retired, currently living in a small house in the countryside. The state granted him a house in the city, but he didn't accept. Not doing business, why live in the city? I returned to the countryside to live for peace. He said so. Nearly 2 years not meeting now, seeing me enter, he and his wife were extremely happy. He pulled me out to the garden to sit on the bamboo cot placed next to the pomelo tree. March pomelo flowers in full bloom, white petals falling speckled on the smooth, clean, sandy soil. The old apricot tree just past the flower season, now sprouting buds, a few remaining flowers yellow fresh in the green foliage. We chatted passionately in the fragrant scent of pomelo. The old man, just past the age of 70, still as lively as ever. His back slightly hunched and hair white, but his steps were still agile, his eyes still squinting humorously as in the old days. Early morning sun rising, Brother Hai Nguyen invited me down to the river. The rivers in the dry season, the sandbank on this side, emerged almost to the middle of the stream. The two of us carried sandals, walking barefoot, stepping on the smooth, cool alluvial sand layer out to the water's edge, then wandering upstream. By the riverbank, there were a few people hoeing the alluvial soil to take advantage of planting a sweet potato crop before the flood season. Seeing us pass by, they leaned on their hoes, watching as if trying to guess what 2 men, one old and one not young, were looking for on this river. Brother Hai Nguyen spoke in a whispering voice. When I was small by this river, there were water wheels, giant wheels made of bamboo, turning, creaking all day and night, then gurgling, pouring water onto the fields. Many years away from home, I keep remembering those sounds, knowing that now using electric pumps is much more convenient, but why do I feel nostalgic and regretful somehow? Telling the grandchildren, they laugh, saying old people like Grandpa are often nostalgic. It is indeed, so I thought. It seems that when getting old, memories become more poignant for those who had a memorable time. Until now, whenever hearing the song Footsteps on the Truong Sun Range again, my body still shudders with a tingling sensation on the skin. The lyrics seem to transmit a source of energy into the body, emitting a strange electric wave, taking my mind to the forests and streams of the past, to the late nights by the fire in the forest, hard days filled with memories imprinted in flesh and blood. Beside me, Brother Hai Nguyen kept telling about the grandchildren. 2 grandsons, one entering university this year, one going to 9th grade. Both study well. They speak English like the wind type on computers, like dancing, remember the faces and names of almost all international football players, love the marching songs of the 2 resistance wars as well as foreign top 10 music tracks. Their generation now is really happy. I laughed. No one hopes for another war like the recent one for children and grandchildren to have a chance to prove their enthusiasm. Those who went before sacrificed blood and bones so that the later generation could be happier, brother. He squinted at me. You are philosophizing again. Well, that is true, but do you know what my 2 grandchildren asked? What? They wondered why in '54 wouldn't it be better if we had a dialogue with the US, avoiding a fierce war lasting decades. You see, they now absorb new things very quickly, but their understanding of history is not good at all. Luckily, they dared to ask how many others don't ask, keeping it bottled up in their heads, then what will happen later. The war passed not long ago, a few decades, right? Yet now we often use the phrase, closing the past. Of course not wrong, but only correct when used in a certain field as for talking about a specific issue. It must be understood correctly. Don't think like that means closing everything, forgetting everything, wiping out hatred in the past never means wiping out the past. No one can live just embracing the past, and war is nothing nice to be nostalgic about it. But must remember war to, by all means, prevent it from recurring, to protect, by all means, what generations sacrificed blood and bones to protect. I'm being a bit grandiloquent, right? But essentially it is so. Listening to him speak, I looked down at my footprints, printed on the water-soaked sand layer, and wondered, in those million grains of alluvium, is there any grain that is a part of Mr. Sun's flesh and bones. Probably if there was by now, it has reached the sea or lies deep under the layers of alluvium, pouring back every year. Looking up towards the source, only saw overlapping green mountains, misty clouds covering the forest corner where the brothers fell back, then now hidden behind layers of distant mountains. But from up there the water flow still flows back here every day. The river has witnessed everything happening for generations. If it could speak, the river would tell that in those years there were people who lived like that, sacrificed like that. March 1999, Phan Van Loi. You have just listened to the entire thrilling story of the confrontation between the Vietnamese Special Task Force and the American CIA. The book title published is Special Task Force TK1. Sincerely thank you for taking the time to follow. If you find it good, please remember to click subscribe to support the channel to follow the next parts. Once again, sincerely thank you and goodbye to you all.